Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We are in the midst of the NBA playoffs. It is here. It has arrived. The series are underway, and we already have our first controversy of the NBA playoffs. Sap, as longtime agitator Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors has been suspended for one game for what will be Game 3. In that series between the Kings and the Warriors as the result of a stomp onto the chest of Domantas Sabonis in the fourth quarter of Game 2 of that series. That series, by the way, is led by the Kings 2-0 as it heads to Golden State now. But yeah, Game 3, Draymond will not be there. That stomp has sent him to the sideline for one game. And this, the NBA in their explanation for the suspension, because Draymond was ejected for the game for that, cited past behavior. We all remember when he was suspended for the groin kicks in the NBA Finals, perhaps costing the Warriors another championship. He's had other incidents, regular season playoffs. So once he was tossed, I wasn't that shocked he was suspended. But Sap, taking a look at the suspension, the ejection, do you agree with the punishment? Do you think it's excessive? How did you see that play going down?
I think it's warranted. I mean, you just can't do this. And I know that he stomped on Domantas Sabonis's ribs. You know, if you go 6 inches higher, now we're talking about the man's heart. I mean, it could have been catastrophic. Maybe I'm being a bit dramatic about that, but, you know, things can happen on a basketball court when you're talking about big, strong guys. And Sabonis obviously got the thing started by pulling on Draymond Green's leg and foot. And you could just see those two guys throughout this series having some sort of conflict, right? And I think that will, again, happen when Draymond Green comes out for Game 4. I didn't realize that Draymond Green was going to turn into Robert De Niro in Goodfellas when he was stomping on Billy Bats, but that's pretty much what it was. But the suspension, I think, was warranted. And I always go back to 2016 because all roads always go back to LeBron James, you know, the kick in the groin right. In Game 3, which in Game 4, which led to the Game 5 suspension. You have to remind people that the league didn't suspend Draymond Green for Game 5. Draymond Green suspended himself. I mean, he got that suspension because he had met the threshold based on flagrant fouls, right? Once you reach a certain threshold, it goes to an automatic suspension. Like that's in the regular season. What is it, 16 or 17
technicals, yeah.
suspensions? Mm-hmm. Right. And also in the playoffs, up to 4 in terms of flagrant fouls. Now it's an automatic suspension. So I just want to push back on this theory that the league stepped in after Game 4 of the 2016 finals and wanted LeBron to win the championship and decided to suspend Draymond Green. He was getting suspended whether he kicked LeBron James in the groin or J.R. Smith in the groin, or if it had been against another team. He was going to get suspended. So again, I think Draymond's priors certainly, you know, weighed into this suspension. And we're both fans of Draymond Green. He's an excellent player, defender, excellent facilitator, you know, kind of a glue guy. I think he's gone off the rails this year, and it started in exhibition season and training camp when he cold cocked Jordan Poole. And I don't know if the team's really recovered from that, which kind of leads me to think that maybe this is the end of Draymond Green with the Golden State Warriors because he's looking for an extension. They have an exorbitant payroll. You know, will they go ahead and sign him for 4 years? I don't know, $120 million or whatever it might be, or do they move on from Draymond Green? He can opt out of his contract. And then where does he go? Because he's kind of a niche player, right? I mean, I don't think you put him on a young team and ask him to be the leader. He'd probably
I think he's been wanting
some of those young players, right?
Yeah, he's been clearly wanting to play for the Lakers, Sap. I mean, I think
that makes the most sense, right?
He's been buddying up to LeBron James. If you listen to his podcast ever, you know, every chance he has to compliment the Lakers or LeBron he's had. So I think that's where he'll end up going. But yeah, Sap, I mean, I agree with you. I think this is the end of the road too. And it certainly didn't help that Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, was at this game, saw the incident take place. And then, you know, right after it, you know, he's taunting the fans and, you know, acting like Hulk Hogan, you know, putting his hand up to his ear and stuff like that. So, you know, that certainly didn't help his case. And then his press conference afterwards, where he took absolutely no responsibility and said, you know, I had to step somewhere. Where do you want me to step? I'm not that flexible. And so, you know, it is what it is. Listen, Domantas Sabonis, 100%. It doesn't happen if he doesn't grab his leg. I think that they accurately, fairly assessed him a technical foul for that, which it should have been. But it was a huge overreaction by Draymond Green, And mostly everybody seems to agree with that, with the exception of guys like, Shaq said, I would have done it too. And like, okay, but that doesn't make it right. And I saw like Damian Lillard doesn't even think it should have been a flagrant foul, let alone a suspension. But, I think that anybody who's being objective could see that it was excessive. And when you take something that's excessive and you put it to the history of the player, then you have to assess a suspension. Again, if it was the other way around and it was Domantas Sabonis doing the stomping, probably he doesn't end up getting suspended because he doesn't have a history of this sort of stuff in the NBA. But when you have the priors, as Draymond does, then it's gonna come back to bite you. That's just the way it is. He plays with a lot of emotion, and he's an agitator, and that's worked extremely well for the Warriors for years. But sometimes that gets the best of him, like it did in 2016 and like it did last night or the other night. And now the Warriors are going to have to figure out how to win game 3 without Draymond Green.
Yeah, I mean, they're down 2-0. They've been horrible on the road, where they were 11-30 in the regular season. So Sacramento held serve. Golden State still tough at home. Sacramento's playing with a ton of energy. De'Aaron Fox to me, is very similar to John Morant as a player. Just doesn't come with a lot of the baggage that John Morant has, but as a physical talent, he's right there with John Morant as one of the most athletic guards in the league. I think he's a better outside shooter. So Sacramento's playing with a lot of emotion, a lot of confidence. Golden State looks old, right? I mean, this is a team that's built around 35-year-old Steph Curry, 34-year-old Klay Thompson, 33-year-old Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins is approaching 30 and missed 2 months in the season. So this is a veteran teams that summoned up all of that last year to win the championship. And this season, they've been barely above 500, terrible on the road. And I think Sacramento has all the momentum. You never count out the Warriors because of Curry and Thompson,
right?
But they're facing an uphill battle trying to get back in the series and ultimately win it.
Yeah, they've had their chances too. In game 1, Wiggins missed a wide open 3 that would have given them the lead. Steph Curry missed a 3 at the buzzer that would have sent the game into overtime. Typically those shots in their history have gone down for the Warriors. And then in game 2, they had a chance to kind of rally and take the game, and the Kings were able to hold them off just enough and win that game. So, the Warriors, it's not like they've been manhandled in those 2 games, but we haven't seen this team down 2-0 since they've started this run. So this is new territory for them. And it's obviously going to be all the more difficult with Draymond on the sidelines for game 3. And so Curry, like you said, the Curry is going to have to step up in a big way. Thompson's going to have to step up. Wiggins looks just so rusty. And so he's going to have to step up because he's been terrible shooting. And then, some of their role players are going to have to step up too. Some of those younger guys like Moody and Kuminga are going to have to start, earning their place on that roster if they want to survive this round in advance. But yeah, the Kings right now are playing great. They're playing with a lot of confidence. And the Warriors are a really good home team, but the Kings, surprisingly, have been a really good road team this year. So the Kings are able to take game 3. We all know that means the series is over. Nobody's ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in the history of the NBA playoffs. So obviously the Warriors are going to be taking this game extremely seriously, and the Kings need to put their foot on the throat of the Warriors. This is a great chance to just end this thing, and it'll be a war in game 3.
This is the 25th series with Steph and Klay during this run, which has led to 4 championships, 6 finals appearances. They've had home court advantage every single series but 4. This is the 4th time. So, obviously they've been able to win on the road over the years, but just not this year. Sacramento's in control, but again, if Klay Thompson lights it up, which he's done a lot this year, he's played a lot better than he did, say, last year. And we know Steph's capable of putting up 42 efficient points. Then all of a sudden that crowd can carry Golden State, but they just look old. Sacramento looks like the younger, fresher, more athletic team. And sometimes that's what happens in this league. The old teams get passed by the more athletic teams. And despite all that experience, sometimes talent and just energy can carry you over the more veteran team.
Yeah, and so this has been, I think, the most buzzed about series because, again, the Draymond stuff, and Sacramento hasn't been to the playoffs in 16 years, and the Warriors are the defending champions. So, they have huge names in Curry and Green and Thompson, and so there's a lot of stuff going on with this series. But there's been, there's other series that are going on, Sap. It's not the only one in the NBA, and we got a lot of competitive series too. So we're gonna take a just a bird's eye view and look at them all. We're not gonna get into the weeds, but we're gonna talk about what we've seen so far and what we like, what we haven't liked from some of these teams, Sap. So let's stay in the West. We'll do those Western Conference series first, and then we'll move over to the Eastern Conference, Sap. Let's talk about your Lakers, who took game one from the Grizzlies, and they play again tonight at 7:30 Eastern, looking to go up 2-0. Already stole home court advantage from Memphis, so if they're able to get this game, it's practically for over. So what in game one, Sap? What did the Lakers do well that helped them win this one?
I think the biggest thing with the Lakers in game one will be the same case in game two and going forward. If they make a run, is the defense of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They combined for 10 blocks in Sunday's win. And again, this series is so stretched out that, game one felt like a month ago. But when LeBron James and Anthony Davis are engaged defensively, that trickles down to the rest of the team, whether it's Austin Davis or Rui Hachimura or any other players, Dennis Schroeder, pick a Laker. Once those two superstars play on the defensive end, and we know they're both elite defenders when the spirit moves them, then the rest of the team just takes off from there. And then the offensive balance, right? LeBron and Anthony Davis didn't really push it on Sunday, but Austin Reeves and Hachimura combined for 52 points. I don't think they're going to do that every single game, but they're both accomplished players who played well over the last 2 months of the season. And we know what LeBron can do. He reads the game better than anybody. He didn't force it on Sunday. Maybe tonight he'll see the opportunity where he'll go out, put 32 points on the board. Maybe Anthony Davis gives you 34. That's going to be difficult going against the Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr. But I just was impressed with the Lakers' defense, and their defense has been good since the trading deadline when they kind of altered this roster. And again, most importantly, LeBron and Anthony Davis engaged defensively. That trickles down to the rest of the franchise, rest of the roster. They're going to be tough to beat. I mean, I wasn't kidding last week when I picked them to represent the Western Conference because the Western Conference is so wide open. It's like pick a team. They still have perhaps the best duo in basketball. We can make a case with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but in terms of accomplishments, and I think even they're fit because you've got a classic big guy in Anthony Davis and a real whatever the hell you want to call LeBron, a point forward.
Right.
I think they really mix well together. It's just they're not as durable as Tatum and Brown at their stage in their careers. But I think their defense was really, really good. And if they can keep that up, I think they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, it really reminds me a lot of that 2018 Cavs team that remade their roster at the trade deadline. Acquiring guys like Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr. And they overhauled their roster. They got quality players, and that's exactly what they did at the trade deadline here. Rob Pelinka did a really good job remaking this roster from what was kind of a crap roster to a competent one. And that's shown since the deadline. Now, I think that the Lakers were fortunate in their draw in that they got a Memphis team that is the 2 seed, yes, but has been kind of rattled down the stretch. Ja Morant obviously is not just hurt, but dealing with some, mental health issues too, and some, off the court stuff that clearly doesn't have him playing like the Ja Morant you would expect. They don't have Steven Adams. They don't have Brandon Clark. So it's not a Memphis team that's firing on all cylinders. So I think it's a fortunate draw for the Lakers for one. And secondly, like you mentioned, Sap, their defense is just so much better. So when you're playing the defense at a high level and you're playing against a team that's not at 100%, people were expecting the Lakers to win this series, and that showed in game one. So if the Grizzlies can't take this game, you may be looking at a sweep potentially. Lakers are definitely in a fortuitous position, and they're they're very closely looking at making sure that they're keeping their guys healthy too, because the Anthony Davis leaving the court at the end of the first half was I think scary for most Lakers fans. My dad called me and said he thought he tore his rotator cuff. Obviously that didn't appear to be the case. They're calling it a stinger, but that's going to be something that they're keeping an eye on every game. Is whenever Anthony Davis falls or bumps another player, oh my God, is he going to get hurt? That's the Lakers' run in this postseason is going to amount to, is Anthony Davis going to be able to stay healthy? If he is, they can go far. If he's not, they're going to get bounced.
He is Samuel L. Jackson in Unbreakable, right? You just
Yeah, Mr.
cringe.
Glass.
Mr. Glass, right? When he walks on the court, he's already injury prone. But again, he's finished strong this year. The last 2 months, he played most, if not all, of the games, and he was playing at an MVP level. So we'll see what happens if he can get through the final 2 months of this thing. We may see that Lakers Celtics finals again, which I predicted a week ago, and maybe I don't look so bad.
Well, we will see, Sap. And then let's move on to the 4-5 series, the Phoenix Suns and the Clippers. That game is knotted at 1 game apiece after Phoenix won last night. The Clippers again stole home court advantage after winning game 1 in what was a really exciting game. And game 2 was not bad in and of itself either. But I think you can see that the Clippers are undermanned, especially when you're looking at the star power of the Phoenix Suns. And that's exactly what happened in game 2, was that it was just too much. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre, and Kevin Durant. Like it's a lot to overcome. You have to play near perfect to be able to beat them, because, if one of their stars has an off night, well, you got 3 other guys who are probably on. So they're going to be a really tough out. And the Clippers, to their credit, have been battling. And in game 1, Russell Westbrook was awful shooting the ball, but made massive plays on the defensive side of the ball and rebounding the basketball. And he's really worked out well. I mean, you can see he's the leader of that team because Kawhi Leonard doesn't speak. So while Kawhi is their best player, unquestionably, and he's been playing fantastic, Westbrook is the emotional leader of whatever team he's going to be on. And even if he doesn't shoot well, he can still provide things for him. And it just seems like he's a better fit on this Clippers team than he was on the Lakers team. But again, Phoenix, just so much star power.
Yeah, without question. And through these first 2 games, Kawhi Leonard's been the best player in the series, which happens quite often. It seems like when Kawhi sees Kevin Durant or LeBron James or anybody who...
He's in the playoffs.
He's in the playoffs. This is his time of year because he basically takes the regular season off, so he's well rested and ready to go. You still give them a puncher's chance. But I never get the feeling that the Clippers have a real true home court advantage. Like, I think that they have kind of a blasé fan base. I mean, obviously, LA is owned by the Lakers, not the Clippers. And I think Durant and Chris Paul are such veteran players that they're going to be just fine playing at Crypto.com Arena, if that's what it's still called.
Yes.
And Devin Booker's another
For
guy
now.
who can... You're right, exactly, until the checks stop clearing. And Devin Booker obviously is a guy who can go out there and light it up at any moment.
Yeah, and he
So I
was
think
phenomenal
Phoenix is still in
last
good
night.
shape. Yeah, he's a sensational player. I mean, he's more of an old school too, in that he has a lot of scores a lot from the mid range. He's not necessarily a great 3-point shooter. Can take it to the basket. He's outstanding. I mean, Westbrook goes 3 for 19, but he still has impact on the game because of his defense and rebounding. I mean, if you want to compare Russell Westbrook to a TV character from years gone by, he's Kramer, right, from Seinfeld. Just like this zany, chaotic guy who, makes you laugh and then you kind of cringe for a moment, and then he does.
He's yelling
crazy
at fans in the middle of the game.
Exactly. Yeah, he's getting in fights with fans. Lord knows he might get in a fight with a teammate, but I think he fits there because, like you said, Kawhi is not a leader. Kawhi just kind of does his own thing. He's like, chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He doesn't speak, but I think that with Westbrook, he's going to give you that energy. He's also going to shoot terribly from the floor. So we'll see what happens with that. I still like Phoenix in that series.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, the Clippers, again, have to make like massive plays consistently in order to win. They really have a talent disadvantage, when you're talking about the Suns, and that's going to be the Suns' advantage. They're not going to have a depth advantage, but they're going to have that top tier talent. Nobody can compete with the top tier talent of the Suns. So that should be interesting to see going forward if the Clippers are able to kind of bounce back a little bit here, or Phoenix just took them 1 game under their belt to kind of like say, okay, we could put this Clippers team away. So let's look at the last series in the Western Conference right now. 1 versus 8. Denver absolutely toyed with the Minnesota Timberwolves in game 1, destroying them 109-80. I don't think this is going to be much of a series. I didn't think so going into it. Minnesota on paper, yeah, they look really good, but it's just like the sum of the parts isn't that good. And Denver, it was essentially wire to wire, won the Western Conference, and nobody's picked them really to win. And I think they're feeling that, and were playing game 1 with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And as ballyhooed as Rudy Gobert is defensively, Nikola Jokic just absolutely ate him alive. And he does that every time he plays him. So they have no answer for him. Jamal Murray played really well. Michael Porter Jr. played well. This series, I think, is just not going to be very competitive, Sap.
This is a case of Denver's constructed as a team, and Minnesota has talented players that don't necessarily fit. Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns are both outstanding players, but they still haven't really made a connection in their 2 years together. Rudy Gobert, who, we've both always thought that he was overrated as a player, even as a defender. But, when you lead the league in blocks and you lead the league in rebounds, sometimes you're defensive player of the year. That's the way it works sometimes. But yeah, Denver's just better constructed. I mean, Minnesota will have one game in this series where maybe they blow Denver out and you say, wow, isn't that a talented team? But they just can't seem to put it together. Denver should roll in this series and end up facing either Phoenix or the Clippers in the next round.
Absolutely. So we don't really have to focus that much on that series, Sap. Let's move over to the Eastern Conference. We'll start with the 1-8 there. Milwaukee goes down 1-0 to Miami as the result of a Giannis Antetokounmpo injury. He was listed as doubtful yesterday, upgraded to questionable tonight. So as he goes, Milwaukee goes, obviously. He's the best, you and I agree, he's the best player in the world. Miami, though, didn't get away from that game unscathed. Tyler Hero broke his hand. He's going to be out for the remainder of this series and will be out unless the Heat miraculously make the NBA Finals. They're not going to have Tyler Hero for the rest of the playoffs. So both teams coming away with pretty major injuries. Milwaukee obviously is losing the better player, but the Heat are not really adept at scoring, and Hero gives them points. So that may hurt them in a big way too. But I think as far as this series goes, Steph, if Giannis is able to just play, even if it's not at 100%, Milwaukee should still be able to beat Miami.
Yeah, you still got Chris Middleton, right? Drew Holiday, two champions who, again, I think Holiday's actually better than he was 2 years ago. I don't think Middleton's as good as he was 2 years ago when they won the championship because of that knee that's given him problems for the last 2 years. With Milwaukee, it comes down to, can you shoot three-pointers against Milwaukee? They pack it in defensively. They dare you to take three-pointers. We saw that against the Celtics
beat them last year. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. When Grant Williams and Peyton Pritchard, of all people, combined for 11 three-pointers in Game 7, it's a blowout. They dared Grant Williams and Peyton Pritchard to shoot threes, and both of those guys made them. I think they were 11 for 25 combined, and that doesn't include Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and the rest of the players last year. And if Miami can hit three-pointers, which they're not really good at because their best player doesn't really take three-pointers, and Jimmy Butler, then you're going to be at the mercy of what Miami does from three-point territory. Miami's always going to be well-coached. Butler's a guy who can steal a game or two in a series. But, yeah, if Giannis can get back out there and be somewhat effective dealing with this, bruised tailbone, which just saying that makes me cringe. But, he's such an accomplished player. And we saw what he did 2 years ago when it looked like he blew out his knee and came back was the finals MVP. So you still got to like Milwaukee's chances.
Yeah, I think Game 1, if there was a game that Miami was going to take, people were saying, okay, they'll take the game 1 because they had to fight for their lives just to get in. The Bucks had been off for like a week and a half. So obviously the Heat had more recent playing experience, and then Giannis goes out. The team obviously feels that he's their leader. That's sort of a gut punch, and Miami was able to take Game 1. But I think, again, Miami's going to really struggle to score. Milwaukee, even without Giannis, and he's, one of the best defensive players in the league, if not the best, still an elite defensive team. And when you're talking about a Miami Heat team that already can't really put up that many points, and you take away Tyler Hero, who might be their best pure scorer. I'm not saying he's anywhere close to the player that Jimmy Butler is, but from a scoring standpoint, he can score from all three. He can score from three, he can score from mid-range, and Butler doesn't really take threes, as you mentioned, Sap. That's going to really hurt them. They're going to have to play Duncan Robinson a lot more. While he's a really good three-point shooter, he's horrible defensively. So I think Milwaukee should be able to take advantage of it and beat Miami. But like you said, Sap, they're well coached. Miami, even without Tyler Hero, they're still going to fight. And this is not who Milwaukee wanted to play in round 1. They wanted to play, Atlanta or the Bulls, and the Celtics got the draw of the Hawks. And you've seen through 2 games what that has meant, because the Celtics have essentially manhandled Atlanta through 2 games.
The Celtics-Hawks series almost feels like games from the exhibition season, right? It's like the Celtics get down by 11 and then they're up 22 like 45 minutes later. If you took the dog for a walk and came back, you'd probably look at the TV and say, how did that happen? They're just better than Atlanta. Not only are they better than Atlanta, it's also a bad matchup for the Hawks. So the Celtics were fortunate that Atlanta beat Miami in the play-in, and the Celtics should have no problem with Atlanta. We both agreed on that before the series started. Maybe Atlanta steals one at home if Trae Young goes off and scores 38 points in a game, but he's been god-awful in the first two games against the Celtics. The interesting thing about Trae Young is throughout his career, in his first 13 playoff games, he averaged 30 and 10. Remember how good he was against the Knicks?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
In that series 2
you
years
and I
ago.
thought he was the next big star in the NBA. I remember talking about it on the show.
Yeah, 13 games, first 13 games, averaged 30 and 10. His last 10 postseason games, 17 and 6. That's a massive drop-off. And then you put him on the defensive end where
exactly,
he is
Sap. Yeah.
Horrible.
They hunt him. Everybody hunts him defensively. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, a bad matchup because the Celtics guards are big and physical. Marcus Smart, Derek White, who's probably been the best player on the Celtics in these first two games of the series. Brogdon's not small. I mean, they've got some physical guards, so it's just a bad matchup for Atlanta. It should be a sweep if the Celtics concentrate for two games. We know that within games they have a tendency of losing concentration. Will that happen for an entire game? You kind of get the feeling, Jet, that the Celtics can beat this team if they play like 20 good minutes, right? Yeah. And that's all they need to do.
They haven't, and either they've beaten the crap out of them in these two games, but they could have won each of those games by 30 points if they had wanted to. They like you said, they lose concentration, they take their foot off the gas. That's what's scary about this Celtics team to Celtics fans is that they're like, well, stop turning it off and turning it on. Just like keep it on, keep the foot on the gas pedal. Because if you do this against a good team next round against the Sixers, they'll come back and they'll beat you. It's the Hawks. So you can say, oh, the Hawks will go on a 15-0 run. We'll just end up beating them in the fourth quarter. No big deal. And they can do that because the Hawks aren't very good. But if you're playing a team that's closer to your level, then if you screw around with a game, you're going to lose that game. So that's going to be something to watch with the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla. And just, again, because I'm a Celtics, fan and nitpicker, last night they were up by about 20 with 2-3 minutes left to go. All the starters were still in the game, except for Al Horford, and Rob Williams was in instead. Why? Why are they playing? Why is he playing their starters in a blowout at the end of a game, especially a guy like Rob Williams who's injury prone? And if you lose him, you may lose your chance at a championship. He's done this throughout the regular season where he doesn't take out the starters late. It's driving me crazy, Sap.
Yeah, it's idiotic, to be quite honest. I mean, you've got other players you can put out there. I mean, what's going to happen with a 20-point lead with 2 minutes left? I mean, that would be the biggest comeback in the history of the sport, especially Rob Williams, who kind of like Anthony Davis, you hold your breath every time he goes out to the basketball court. Remember last year we criticized Doc Rivers for leaving Joel Embiid in a game during a blowout. He ended up fracturing his orbital bone, and that really cost maybe Philadelphia that second round series last year against Miami. So yeah, when you've got a sizable lead like that, get injury prone players out of there, and obviously get your stars out of there because you don't want to see them get some kind of stupid injury in the final 2 minutes of a game. Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, it's twofold, Seth, because right now I think it's I'm not a Mazzulla fan at this season. Maybe he'll continue to grow because he's very young. But I think he makes some boneheaded decisions. It was twofold in that one, get your guys out because you don't want to get hurt. And he's gone with a short rotation, which is fine. I actually think that that's smart. But the guys that he hasn't played, Peyton Pritchard, Grant Williams hasn't played 2 games, Blake Griffin, those sort of guys, Muscala. They could have used, 3 minutes of playoff playing time to just stay fresh and have, play competitive minutes in case you need them. So I don't know what the hell he's doing. And there, like I said at the beginning, Sap, if the Celtics are going to win, they're going to have to overcome bad decisions from Joe Mazzulla. I just don't have any confidence in him, in terms of making a chess move to be able to win. They have enough talent to overcome him and win the title, but he continues to baffle me, Sap. But we don't have to linger on Joe Mazzulla.
That sounds good. I mean, they're in complete control of this series, so just get it over with in 4, rest up, and again, you can make a case that maybe they ran out of gas against Golden State last year because they didn't take care of business against Milwaukee and Miami quicker, then they ultimately won those series in 7 games. So, if you win those series in 6, especially the Heat series where you're up 3-2 coming home, if you wrap it up, you get a little extra rest going into the finals. I don't know. The Celtics are a fairly young team. They shouldn't be using that as an excuse. But if it was an excuse, then, save some minutes throughout the regular season, save it in the postseason, and don't leave Rob Williams on the floor for the end of the game when you're up, 17, 18, 19 points.
Right. All right. Let's look at the 3-6. Philadelphia has had very little problems with the Brooklyn Nets, and Nets played better in game 2. But we talked about this before the series started, Sap. This is just not the Brooklyn team is seeded based off of what they did in the first half of the season. They have a bunch of interesting young players, good players, veteran players, role players, but it's not a team that should be threatening the Philadelphia 76ers, and Philly's pretty much had their way with them through 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrese Maxey was spectacular in game 2. Embiid's been solid throughout. Harden had a good first game. They've got too much talent for Brooklyn. And again, if you're Philadelphia, with a player like Embiid, you want to wrap this thing up as quick as possible because you're probably looking at a long series against the Celtics in round 2. So you want to, preserve the big fella who I think is going to be the MVP in the league. So try to wrap this series up in 4-5 max. So when you start that Celtics series that, you've got more left in the tank. But Philadelphia looks solid here. Brooklyn's just overmatched in this series. It feels a lot like the Celtics Atlanta. It's just one team's better than the other.
Yeah. I mean, of the 3 top seeds, Milwaukee, Philly, and Boston, Milwaukee got the hardest draw, and they're the 1 seed. So, they'd much rather be playing Brooklyn or Atlanta than playing Miami. Not saying Milwaukee's going to lose. I still think that they'll win the series. But yeah, Boston fortunate to get Atlanta, Philadelphia fortunate to get Brooklyn. Neither one of them presenting much of a problem. And then we'll go to the final series that we haven't talked about yet. The Cavaliers, the 4 seed, the Knicks, the 5 seed. This one is split in Cleveland. Knicks surprisingly took game 1. Cleveland really handled their business in game 2, was blowing out the Knicks for most of the entirety of the game. Similar to what we were just complaining about, for some reason, Tom Thibodeau had Julius Randle in at the end of the game. He re-aggravated an ankle injury. Don't know what his status is going to be good for game 3. You do know at 1 game apiece, game 3 is going to be incredibly raucous at Madison Square Garden as the Knicks try to advance out of the first round for just the second time since the 90s.
Since 1999. Yeah, they've won 1 series exactly since 1999.
So Cleveland, you and I both picked them to win this series. I think Cleveland should win this series, but game 1 was a little scary. Like, why it didn't seem like they were taking it seriously, and New York took advantage. So with the crowd behind them, the home crowd behind them in game 3, it's a massive game. This could be the game that decides the series, Sap.
Yeah, the thing about Cleveland, they're really good defensively. Top team in the league defensively. You got Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, who are both elite bigs, who are very versatile as well. Sometimes their offense bogs down a little bit. And I just always go back to the fact that they really don't have an accomplished wing, a 3-and-D guy. I mean, I keep bringing up Harrison Barnes, who I think is just a really good, solid player on both ends of the floor. If you put him on Cleveland, I think they would be a championship contender, but they just don't have those wings that the league has a ton of, right? I mean, just look at the Celtics with Tatum and Brown and, go throughout the league. It seems like every team has 2 really good wings, not as good as the ones on the Celtics, but still players that can go get you 20 points. So Mikal Bridges, looks what he's done in Brooklyn since being traded there from Phoenix a couple months ago. So I think that's their Achilles, is that they don't have an accomplished wing, but I think Cleveland's still the better team. And again, what's Thibodeau doing, leaving Julius Randle in a 20-point blowout? A guy who's logged a ton of minutes this year, who's dealing with an ankle, and now he kind of aggravates that injury, and we'll see how it impacts him going forward. This does feel like a 6-7 game series because both teams have flaws. Both teams are mentally tough and play good defense. So I don't know if anybody's going to get a stranglehold of the series. You could just start seeing back and forth type games. Ultimately, I just think Cleveland's better.
Do you think Sap, winner of game 3, wins the series, or would you not go that far?
I wouldn't go that far because I think if Cleveland wins game 3, they really take control. If the Knicks get game 3, I think Cleveland can certainly come back in game 4 and then maybe get back home court advantage in game 5. I think Donovan Mitchell is going to light up Madison Square Garden once, if not twice, in the next 2 games because he was expecting to be traded to the Knicks in the offseason. That's the team he grew up rooting for. He wanted to play there. Instead, he's in Cleveland.
They passed.
I think they passed on him, which, that's why they're the Knicks. So I think Donovan Mitchell is going to go out and light it up. And I think they'll take at least one in New York. I could see them taking two. I think they're just a slightly better team than the Knicks, but both teams are mentally and physically tough teams.
Just as a quick aside, Sap, my sister is on some dating apps out in LA, and she matched with a Knicks fan, and she's in her profile pictures wearing the Celtics jersey. Everybody knows she's a huge Celtics fan, and he said, if the Knicks win in this round, we play the Celtics, and you should be careful because we won all 3 games against the Celtics this year. And she texted me and said, what should I say back? And I said, well, tell him that last year the Celtics had more playoff wins in just last year than the Knicks have had in the last 20 years. And I think that was, I don't know I don't see that relationship blossoming at this point.
No, that's a deal breaker, I think, at this point, right? Plus, also, if the Knicks win, which I don't think they will, then they would have to play either Milwaukee or Miami in the next round before they would get to the conference finals.
That's true. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah, see that? See what happens when you go on these dating apps? Exactly. What is it, swipe right or swipe left? How do you get off of it?
I think right is yes, left is no. It's been quite a while for me now. But
you're an old married man. That's right. I'm
exactly. Yeah, you should get on one of the dating apps.
Yeah, that'll go well.
You just you take a picture with your Barry Bonds plates in a LeBron jersey. And I think you'll attract go well. A lot of people.
Yes. Yeah, psychiatrist probably first and foremost.
Oh man, but we're going to be back on Friday talking about more of these the playoff games, what we've seen, what's worked well, and see if any team really puts away another team before that, and also see if there's any more suspensions or injuries. We haven't really talked about that, Seb. We'll talk about that more Friday. Been a lot of injuries in the first couple of games, and and that may lead to talk of shortening the season. I don't know, but there's always going to be lots to talk about with the playoffs. They've been really good so far. So make sure you stick here and check out the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap for all the newest news and analysis of the playoffs. You can check out our social medias at John Sap 25, at Jet Stryer, and you can find the show wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Go to Full Press Coverage. Check them out. We're there. Lots of great stuff there. And we will be back on Friday. So listen then. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys later. See ya.